Hey guys, this is Shayne Combs. My brother Matt and I have spent probably the past 30 years investing so much in sports and in leadership. And we have recently formed an idea to share so much of our experiences and opinions with people who share that same passion and want to grow in this area. During our time, I think we realize how many good concepts we have stolen from people. Rarely are we out there reinventing the wheel, and it's one of those things that we think we have some great topics. We just kind of allow us to jumpstart some great discussion with leaders of all ages. Now, for our local listeners that know Matt and I, obviously we're from Chillicothe, Ohio, and over the past decade we have constructed a website called SVCSportZone.com and to cover our local athletes here in the Scioto Valley Conference. And we are currently in our 9th year of SVC Sports Talk, a podcast show that is up around 280 episodes. So I guess what we're trying to do here is we want to make sure that all of our local listeners that we're clear. We're going to make every effort to continue our local coverage on SVC Sports Talk and SVCSportZone.com. This new idea, an idea that we are calling expanding the zone, is designed to take every topic from all levels, from every sport imaginable, and dissect it in every way possible. At SVCSportZone.com, over the years, we've always had a thing, kind of a motto of 100% SVC, 100% of the time. So expanding the zone allows us to take so many topics that many of you have suggested throughout the years, and we hope to explore them in an entirely new way. Think about this with me. From the Houston Astros cheating to Jay Billis debating if college athletes should be getting paid. You have all your little league dynamics, in terms of state of the game. And there's just a lot of discussions there. We think these are all things we want to figure out what influence they have on high school sports and how it influences our leadership roles with student athletes in the classroom and in the athletic setting. So on that note, again, we're excited to continue what we do on SVC Sports Talk with my buddy John Bruce and I, but this is just kind of a new thing, expanding the zone. And on this pilot episode, we start at the foundation of leadership. Obviously, we are in an unprecedented time right now, and leadership is desired more than ever. So Matt and I can't thank you enough for listening, and we hope you enjoy our inaugural show. So on that note, I guess I get us started here. Show number 1 of Expanding the Zone. Our title is going to be High School Sports Back to Normal. When is that? How do we get there? What does it look like? What's our role that we play as teachers, as coaches, as athletic directors? All of these different hats that leaders wear. And I guess I already kind of introduced myself there at the beginning. Again, I should say that I'm a teacher coach at a school called Paint Valley High School, just outside of Chillicothe. As you can see the banner up here behind me, it's one of the 8 schools there in the Scioto Valley Conference I mentioned. I've been a teacher for 20 years. I've been coaching for 26, I believe it is. Every year out of high school, I've coached high school baseball, but I have experience in several sports. And I guess as I introduce my brother Matt here, Matt, as you come in, I know we're excited to get to this topic and dive right in and do all these things, but I guess that we should probably slow down a second. And for a lot of our listeners outside the area that maybe don't know us as well, maybe take a quick minute to just tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, Shayne, I'm excited to be a part of your new show, Expanding the Zone. Obviously, I think that, like you said, the people locally realize the SVC Sports Zone's like nearing 300 podcasts or whatever, which is 300 episodes, I should say, of a podcast, which is just crazy. I mean, that's highly, highly successful for a podcast. And like you say, you're calling this Expanding the Zone, which I think is kind of cool in the sense that instead of just talking about local sports, we're going to really tackle some of the I guess tough topics or just different topics. I think folks will even see tonight when we start talking about some of the things that has to do with this craziness we're dealing with right now with the COVID and all this. We're gonna come at it from a different angle than I think what people are used to seeing. But myself, very similar to your background, just 20 some years in education. I think 21 years now, if I'm not mistaken, as a head basketball coach, and coached a lot of different sports. I think I'm in year 8 or 9. I lose track of as an AD, as an athletic director. So I think I'm going to be coming at some things with that lens, I guess, of athletic administrator and coach, and just basically that's my experience, and that's probably the lens which I see things through. But I think also, having been in the classroom as a teacher, having been an assistant coach, a head coach, different sports, coached some baseball, coached some golf, coached a little track when I first started. And I think that because of that, like you, we've had a variety of experiences, which I would like to think help us form opinions on these things that we're going to be talking about.
Matt, I think back to about a decade ago, I met a guy named Bruce Knox, DBK Media Services, and he's the one that kind of got me into the podcasting and of our SVC Sports Talk that you'd mentioned, the 280 shows. But really, podcasting, as I learn more, has become such a great professional development for me. I know you and I've shared these concepts. We like to listen to a lot of different shows. I guess what I would ask you is, as you started to form the idea for expanding the zone to kind of connect with some of the ideas that I had, and we were sharing and bouncing things off, why this show? Why will this work? Maybe who does it work for? Maybe even share some of the topics. Just talk to us about just maybe share with the fans just the concept that led us here tonight to get this thing rolling.
I think for us, Shayne, and we've had a lot of conversations on this over time, but I think you have to be willing to be a part of the solution. And I think when we talk about some of these issues and how they affect, because whatever issue we take, we're going to address it obviously at the high school level and below. We're not going to be talking about, although we may take a situation like you mentioned, just as an example, the cheating scandal with the Houston Astros. We're not going to be talking about that from a national level. We're going to be saying, okay, how does cheating affect high school? Does it happen in high school? Does it happen at the lower levels? So whatever topic we take, we're going to be tackling that from the standpoint of high school and below. So I think, to answer your question, this podcast, I think, will be informative, hopefully entertaining, but informative to folks that are involved in high school athletics at whatever level or whatever position, whether it be a coach or whether it be an administrative position or assistant coach or whatever, maybe even just somebody who watches high school sports. Hopefully those types of folks will want to listen to this as well. But for me, talking about these issues, not so much to complain, as we get into some of our topics, for instance, and I'm not going to go over every topic we're going to do, but you mentioned a couple. As we get into talking about the state of the game of high school basketball, of high school football, we're going to talk about official shortage. We have one of the big topics right now is official shortage of officials in certain sports. As we talk about some of these things, social media issues, I'm just going off the top of my head here. I know we've probably got 15 or so topics we've already discussed as possibilities for future episodes of this. And as we talk about those, I hope that we do it. I hope two things. I hope, one, that we do it from a standpoint that people consider unique. We're not just giving you the same old, okay? And then secondly, I hope we're offering solutions, or at least things we think could be solutions to certain issues in high school sports. And so that's what I'm excited about, really doing exactly what the title of your show says. You guys talk about a lot of different topics for one league in SVC Sports Zone. And all we're doing here is literally what the show title is, which is expand that. It just expand that zone into other areas, and should be exciting.
Matt, as I get started, if we're going to start and hold true to what we say the philosophy of expanding the zone is going to be, and covering world topics, obviously, as we've touched on here a couple times already, the COVID-19, the virus, and the I want to dive into it tonight in a way that nobody has yet and really get to a couple situations. At the same time, with this being our first episode, I also want to start to talk how much leadership means to me and some of the things that come to mind with leadership, and get into the topic. I think as the show moves on, I think I'm probably the most excited to look at it in terms of, as the title said tonight, where are we going? What's this look like at the end? But first, let me slow down and just talk leadership and get your concepts. And maybe some of the coaches that are listening, or athletic directors or teachers that are going through, or maybe someone in their workplace that holds leadership roles that might be able to respond to what I'm saying here. But I guess the foundation of leadership for me, as I've really started to dive into it over the last decade, is perspectives. And when I say perspectives, I think I'm talking about the roles that people play. And the first thing that comes to my mind is what happens now that I'm 20 years into this. More and more, you mentioned as my brother, you've changed roles from the classroom to athletic director. I've had 4 or 5 of my very best friends go from teacher to principal, or from teacher to athletic director. I've had some really good friends go from junior high coach, JV coach, assistant, varsity assistant, all the way up to head coach. And I think we all can agree that what happens is our perspective changes, and therefore the way we handle situations and go through different things, change. What makes this so unique is this is something that we haven't come across before. So it doesn't matter if I sit here tonight and I say I've coached 25 straight springs of high school baseball, or if you've coached 25 years of basketball, or whatever it is. We're going through some things for the first time. How do you think the perspective in terms of leaders, in terms of what they're facing now, in the unique situation of this, how do you think that is influencing people and their everyday contingency plans, and we're waiting and we're putting things forward and then it changes? Just kind of maybe share your own experience here as you're going through it for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, every single person involved in this is new to it, right? I mean, it's nobody's ever, none of us have ever seen anything like this in any walk of life. But since we're a sports show, we're going to talk about it mainly from that angle. But I look at coaches right now, and you're a spring sports coach, Shayne, obviously being a baseball coach, like you mentioned, so you can probably comment on this as well as anybody. But I know as an athletic director, our spring sport coaches right now at the school that I'm associated with, we have baseball, softball, and we have track. Those are basically our spring sports. I know these coaches right now have found unique ways to coach virtually, basically over the last almost month, I guess now, since we had our in Ohio. Ohio, and I know we'll have some people listen to this from other areas, but in Ohio, the shutdown was on the 16th, I believe, was when we shut down. Monday the 16th.
I think Friday the 13th actually was our picture day, and I think that we were anticipating coming back to school on that Monday, which would have been the 16th, and then basically over the weekend, school got shut down and everything went.
Yeah. Right. I think officially the shutdown was like end of business on the 16th, but most people shut it down that weekend. And so what's happened between that, we have a mandatory non-contact period from our state association. But unlike most non-contact periods, it's just a physical no contact period. You're still allowed to communicate with your athletes. And I know, our coaches, for instance, have done a great job of sending text, emails, whatever, device they use to communicate with their team. Whatever app or whatever, they're constantly reaching out to their players. Hey, I know this is a tough time. Hang in there. Really coaching their mental health a little bit, because these kids right now are missing
Sure.
out on spring sports. They're seniors. The seniors are missing out on a whole bunch of stuff that seniors shouldn't have to miss. We know that, sports and non-sports stuff. And so our coaches, and I think coaches a lot of places, and you can, like I said, you can talk to this a little bit, are really continuing to coach, even though they're not physically coaching their sport. They're coaching their kids, through motivational, text, or, hey, hang in there. And right now we're holding out hope. Obviously, our schools are shut down until May 4th. And I guess we're holding out I think probably a slim glimmer of hope that we will have some spring sports, but nonetheless, we have that hope right now until we hear otherwise. So I think that's the role of leadership right now. You said it, as the whole point of being a leader is you step forward and do something. And I think our coaches are doing something right now. They're doing whatever they can do from their own house, basically, to continue to coach their kids.
Yeah, they are. As a spring coach, I'm not on here to, persuade for paychecks and all that. But I'm here just to cover the topic. And what I'll say, and I feel like I speak on the behalf of not just baseball coaches, on high school coaches that do it the right way throughout the entire country, is I go all the way back to the end of last year. And I think that we had a solid team. We won 18 games, won a sectional title, went to the district, played a really a good baseball team there in the district. Here, our Ohio listeners will know Wheelersburg, how good they are. And we lost. And I can remember that night, Matt, sitting around for 2 to 3 hours on notes and different things, first at the school and then back here at the house, and putting different things in place. And I want to do this, I want to get this done. And then throughout time, you're going through all your different equipment and your uniform inventory. And then you get into your off-season workouts, and you get into fundraising, and you just, the grind better than anybody. And you go all the way through, and then you come into preseason, you're going to clinics, you're doing the different things, professional development, and you're putting those times in. So I guess I say that to say this: don't you feel like, I'm not just even talking about spring sports. I guess I would say, for coaches that are passionate, coaches that are doing it the right way, for anyone to make the argument in 2020 that your season starts at the end of February, and you practice a little bit and you play some games and then you go to a tournament and then the end, that's a little silly, isn't it? I mean, I think we would be cheating our profession if we didn't use this platform to make sure that it's clear to understand how people use a varsity basketball coach. What, 10 months, 11 months, probably?
I'm going to be honest with you, Shayne, and this leads into this topic. You mentioned it briefly there. And look, this show, we're going to tackle all subject matter, right? I mean, whether it's easily agreed upon or not, this whole idea of not paying coaches for spring sports is bizarre to me. I'm just going to be honest with you. When I first heard, and I'll be honest with you, I got a survey, and I'm going to share for our YouTube, for the folks that are watching us on YouTube, you'll see a chart come up on your screen here in just a second. I'll throw it up. But basically, our state athletic directors association sent out a survey asking how is your school planning on paying spring coaches? And I about fell out of my chair when I saw it. I thought, what do you mean? You pay them, is what I feel like. But I'm speaking for myself. I haven't spoken to anyone at my school about this, to be quite honest. So I didn't participate in the survey because I didn't know how to answer the question. But many schools did participate in the survey, and like I said, I'll throw up on the screen the results of that. But basically, schools are the schools are either paying coaches in full. Here you can see, those of you that, like I said, are watching it. If not, I'll just describe this verbally. But 68, or I should say, about 39% of all the people that answered are paying the coaches their full contract, and about another 38, 39% weren't sure. Okay. Out of all the people that answered, a pretty small percentage, about 14%.
Let me interrupt you there real quick, Matt. Does it surprise you as an administrator? And again, these are tough decisions, unprecedented time, but does it surprise you how many people have already decided? And again, I know there's states out there that just called it quits. And I know Ohio, we've kind of taken the stance of, hey, we're going to hang in there and see how this goes. I guess the question when I see these numbers, and again, I'm seeing the results. I ended up doing the survey, but I'm seeing the results for the first time. Does it surprise you how many have already made this decision?
Not entirely, only because I think you have to plan ahead. You have to plan in the event of, right? I mean, right now, if we've learned anything in this whole process is you better think ahead a couple weeks, because what's coming next, right? Because it seems like this world, whether it be sports or otherwise, is changing daily. But so I don't know that these answers, Shayne, are. I think these answers are obviously, if we don't have spring sports, here's what we're going to do. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Obviously, if we come back and we play, then I think it goes without saying that you just go ahead and pay the contract out. But I guess my thing is when I saw this, the thing that really, I guess the thing that surprised me is the best word maybe, is why are we even considering something like this? In my mind, I guess when you look at I guess I have to ask the question, what do you stand to gain as a school district by not paying coaches? And for me, and I know people say, well, you gain money. Well, it's a relatively small amount of money, but when you start considering an entire school budget, it's money that's already been earmarked for that. Contracts have been signed. And let's face it, coaches have literally coached in season for about 3 weeks before any of this was shut down. And at least here in our state in Ohio, we started like on the 24th, I think, something like that, of February, and went to like the 16th. So you're talking coaches have already put that time in. Coaches, like I said earlier, have continued to try to stay in touch with their athletes, give them home workouts they could do, whether it be weightlifting workouts, throwing workouts for whatever they can do.
Honestly, Matt, what I found is just from the mental health side of things, just keeping spirits up and keeping people, just letting them know that you care and that you're a resource for them as well as their family.
And at this point, here in Ohio, the schools are shut down until like May 1st. So most likely the OHSAA is not going to make a decision on sports until the governor makes a decision on schools. So my point is, officially, spring sports won't be canceled till probably about the 1st of May anyway. So you're talking about a season that if you were in normalcy here, teams would be a week or so away from starting tournament play at that point. So my point is, coaches have already put pretty much the entire season in, even albeit unconventionally here the last couple of weeks. And to me, it's just, there's a right and wrong way to treat people. There's when coaches sign these contracts, it's in good faith that they're going to, get paid, that they're going to perform their duties. And in my mind, coaches have performed their duties to what they've been allowed to do. When they're told, hey, you can't have contact, well, then you can't have contact, and coaches are finding other ways to get the job done. So I would like to think that, again, in a world, and you mentioned it with coaching, Shayne, there's no sport that you just coach from day one of practice till the end of the tournament.
Right.
There's off season in every sport now. I know our baseball, softball coaches were throwing, hitting in the middle of the winter, indoor cages, whatnot. Our track coaches were taking athletes to indoor meets over the winter, and many times transporting them there, on their own dime or whatever. These coaches are putting forth the effort to build a program basically for 12 months. I mean, year round. So to say, well, we're going to prorate their pay because they didn't really get to fulfill their duties, I got to be honest with you. I think that's kind of lame. I think coaches have more than fulfilled their duties, and I hope that schools do right by them, because in many cases, these some of these coaches have been around a long time, and they're hard to find. They're hard to find good ones, and I think as schools we have to take care of those people.
I think that's fair. And I think as we start to move forward in this discussion, we've talked about, look, we're just like any other coach or leader in this. I've appreciated the senior night stuff you see on Sports Center. We've done some SVC shout outs to seniors. Everybody is honoring senior, and I think that is wonderful. What we were wanting to do tonight is we were wanting to, again, to cover this in a unique way. And I think one of the most unique things we've come up with is I want to start, Matt, to move toward, how does this end? What's this look like as we're going through the process? And then by the time we get to the end, what does this even look like? And here's something I want to share with you. And I thought this was something that even came to my mind as you were putting that up on the screen a second ago. I was thinking about, anytime you're in leadership, you always try to study the situation. You try to do what's best for the people you're leading, and then you put it out there. You try to own it. You try to trial and error. You try to think, okay, let's be better. How did that work? And again, this is so unique that I think, doesn't it help sometimes when you're trying to make a decision if someone goes first?
Yeah,
Let's just start real.
It's tough to be first. Yeah,
Let's just start real basic. You're an athletic director. We're in the middle of winter. The snow's coming. You wake up in the morning. I'm sure there's administration that has to go through policy to figure out, are we going to have school or not? Then you, as an athletic director, you as a head basketball coach, you're going to start to decide, wait, we're going to play the game tonight. Don't you think in all of those decisions, you're trying to put safety first? You're trying to make sure, because the decisions you're making are going to impact several people throughout the entire area. Don't you feel like there's a comfort level of someone being first, or a group of people kind of doing it the same, rather than you being stuck out there on that island when it comes to making tough decisions? Just talk this tough decision making first for us before we move further into this topic.
Yeah, I think that like using your example right there, obviously most athletic directors are going to have to contact their transportation people, their superintendent. Obviously find out what are we going to be able to do in this particular situation. But you've seen it a million times. A lot of times when that first game gets canceled, the dominoes fall, right?
It's a lot harder for the other ones to play. Sure.
Yeah, like if you're in a league where you've got 5 or 6 schools right there in your county or whatever, one school cancels, well, we better do the same thing. One game cancels, we better do the same thing. Or vice versa. Somebody steps forward and says, hey, we're playing tonight. Well, okay, yeah.
Hey, they're playing.
We can play. Yeah, we can play. So I think I do. I think that it is tough. And we're going to see this as we hopefully at some point start to come out of this thing. There's going to be decisions made, whether you agree with them or not. And those decisions, whoever makes those decisions first, in terms of it's okay to practice now, it's okay to play now. And I'm talking, it could be Little League Baseball. It could be,
all eyes are going to be on you.
Oh, sure. I mean, and it could be, we could be talking fall high school sports here, a couple months away. Whatever decisions start to be made, I think whoever steps out into the front of it and makes decisions first will probably, honestly, they'll probably be the pace setters in this.
Well, I hope you don't mind me going this route with this. Something that jumped out at me was at the college level, and again, I think it's going to impact high school in this way. I'll explain. Barry Alvarez at Wisconsin. People our age, Matt, think of Coach Alvarez, right? Like when we were growing up, we're 2 guys here in our 40s, so most people our age think of him as the longtime football coach there at Wisconsin. For those that don't know, he's now the athletic director. And the NCAA, when all this went down, had kind of stepped forward in leadership role and said, hey, here's what we're going to do for our seniors. We're going to grant them the opportunity in 2021 to still have some eligibility. We're going to throw forth some of the financial aid, and we're going to work through the schools and the different things with some of the scholarship money and some of the financial things that have to be done. and allow these kids to play. Well, that in a time like this, let's face it, that's probably in the court of public opinion, the 2 thumbs up, right? That's the way to go about doing it. That's probably the good thing. Well, as you get into some of the logistics, not all the schools have agreed. Well, Wisconsin was one of the first this past week to step forward and say that they're not going to necessarily go this route. And that certainly impacts the high school game. Like I'll take myself. I've been very fortunate to coach some incredible young men here. I have one young man that's playing down at Shawnee State University in his freshman year. I have a senior that's signed to go to Rio Grande. I have a junior that's signed to go to EKU. If you think about the way the scholarships and the way the rosters would be influenced, I think Wisconsin, it said, had 35 spring athletes throughout all their sports, and obviously at the college level, they're going to have far more. But don't you think that a lot of times take the court of public opinion and then take the reality and the logistics of all of these things? This is certainly going to impact our high school kids. It's going to impact our high school programs, our recruitment process. But for this particular topic, don't you think this serves as an example? I know I'm intrigued to watch over the next 2 to 3 weeks to see in the Power 5 conferences, all the way down to the small colleges and so forth, to see which way people kind of decide to go. Don't you think this is a great example of someone going first and to see how people may or may not follow?
Yeah, we'll see. And I think you may be right. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We've seen it. I think we have seen it in the world of sports. I mean, think back. It seems like forever ago, but about 3 weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, think back when the first sports cancellation started on a national level. If you remember, the NBA, the NBA shut it down.
Rudy Gobert there with the Jazz and so forth on that night, right?
Then all of a sudden, the college league tournaments, the conference tournaments, right in the middle of the action, basically just pulled the plug and said, like, the ACC tournament was midstream. Hey, we're done.
Hey, not to interrupt you, but don't you think that's the obvious thing, and how tough these decisions were? The fact that these things were being canceled as kids were warming up.
Oh, well, right here in Ohio, our OHSAA girls state tournament was postponed during warmups. And, again, these are decisions that have never been made before. So you can't be 100% sure who's right, who's wrong, but all you can do, but that goes back to what you're talking about with leadership. When you're in a leadership position, you have to do what you think is right, regardless of popularity. And look, you're going to find out on this show, if people listen to this show very long, they're going to find out that I am not always in agreement with our state association or the National Federation of High Schools and some of the decisions they make. And I won't hesitate to express that on here, because I think that's part of what we do on this show. But I've got to tip my hat to the Ohio High School Athletic Association right now, and Jerry Snodgrass, our director, because I think they've done the best they can do in a difficult situation. I mean, really, they haven't canceled spring sports yet. They've continued to delay it. It would have been very easy for them just to say, this thing's going to get out of control. Let's just get out ahead of this and just cancel everything. They've stayed the course. They've waited it out. They've already put a plan in place that if we go back to school in early May, here's how we can play an abbreviated schedule and a tournament, right? Over the month of May and into June. That's leadership. You step up, you make a decision, you say, this is what we have to do. And it's, this isn't a topic that everyone's going to agree on. Not everybody agrees that the state basketball tournament should have been canceled. Not everybody is going to agree if spring sports is canceled that we shouldn't have tried. But I think ultimately leadership is doing the best you can, trying to look at every avenue, every possible way of handling a situation and making the call. And like you said, using the Wisconsin example, it wasn't necessarily down the avenue of popularity here on this, but it's what they felt like they had to do for their future athletes coming in there and what was best moving forward for their school. and we'll see what other schools do on it. But you're going to see the same thing at the high school level, because eventually someone's going to make a decision once the governor says, okay, the stay-at-home order's off, and even if we don't go back to school, and even if this is in the summer, so eventually he's going to say, okay, you're allowed to start doing these things. Someone's going to be the first to say, you know what, we're going to take our kids to team camp. Hey, we're going to go to a shootout. We're going to have open gyms. We're going to have, and not every school is going to agree on that. I mean, as you look, I know we're going to get into this more here in a little bit in terms of how this thing ends. When you start looking down the road, there's going to be a lot of disagreements, I think, on what courses should be taken as we start stepping this down.
Well, let's timeline it a little bit then. Let's go ahead and start to walk down this path of how it ends. Let's just start with May. Okay, so as of now, going to try to go back to school in May. Don't you think, in terms of staying in your lane of leadership, my job as a coach is to have contingency plans. Your job as an AD is to have contingency plan. Hey, here's what your league, here's what your school's going to look like in terms of your schedules and different things. Principals, I know, are working hard. Teachers, we're working hard trying to have different lessons in place. What's our curriculum going to look like for 1 month?
Right.
So we're in our lane of leadership. That kind of makes it simple on your state association when it comes to athletics, in terms of the leadership, and those calls are coming from someone far higher than you. Agree? So I want to ask you, I assume, go back to school, go back to some sort of sports. Now let's fast forward and ask this question. What happens come, say, June 10th, June 15th, if you're no longer in school? Doesn't that kind of get a little bit more confusing in the leadership? You as a coach, you as an AD, what's that summer open gym look like? What's that summer weightlifting look like? What's that summer team camp look like?
Right, because if you look and say, let's say we don't go back to school, okay?
Right.
That's when it gets really crazy, because if you go back to school, it sort of sends this message of, okay, things are sort of getting back to normal. We're trying to turn the corner a little bit. It's okay to start doing these things. But if let's say spring sports are canceled altogether, and now look at your scenario, Shayne, where you get into June, right? And, all of a sudden, like I said, couple people start hosting shootouts or scrimmages or team camps. I mean, think of a team camp. Let's say in late June, early July, somebody says, hey, we're okay to offer a team camp now. As a coach, are you going to take 20 kids and stay in a dorm? And I guarantee you're not going to find 20 sets of parents that all agree whether that's okay or it's not. You're going to have some that say, yeah, we're okay. Some that, hey, I'm a little concerned about that. So again, as a coach, probably as an athletic director, and if you're a principal, superintendent, you probably have to be involved in basically telling your coaches, here's what we're allowing you to do. It's probably not going to be left up to the coaches in this situation. The school administrations are probably going to say, hey, I mean, I can tell you this, in my 20-some years of coaching, I don't typically ask my superintendent principal, hey, can I go to a scrimmage in the middle of June? I mean, it's just assumed that as a basketball coach, you're going to go do these things.
Follow the proper procedure and go play.
I can promise you, I'm not doing anything in June in this situation without running it by my superiors, because it's just a different situation. And I think that's where it comes into that, those leadership things you're talking about, maybe those chain of command situations that I know you're going to discuss a little bit. As we get into June, I know you said you wanted to go kind of on a timeline. July.
Do we agree then if we start down here with May and then look to August, that school kind of sets our guideline for us?
Well,
but
it will.
In the middle, in the summer, that's where it gets kind of tricky if we have or have not gone back to school.
It is, because as you get into, like I said, June is typically a busy month for your basketball programs. Some places, some schools may have their own summer baseball, or at least an affiliation with Legion baseball, stuff like that. But as you get into July, now you're getting into football. And let's be real honest here, okay? I mean, we all love, as an AD, I love all the sports. I actually am very fond of baseball. I'm a big baseball fan. But as you start to get into football, okay, and if there's a threat of football season not going off without a hitch, you're going to see people sweat it out a little bit because football pays the rent. All right. For these schools, football is the sport where you're getting your revenue. It is your main revenue generator. And I think then you're going to start to get a real crazy situation of people saying, whoa, wait a minute here. We got to figure out a way to have football. You understand what I'm saying, Shayne? And that really starts in July because, you know, the last part of July, people are getting their camp days in, leading into their first official practices. And by the time August rolls around, you know, you're going. So I guess what I'm saying is decisions are going to have to be made athletically way before school starts. You know, if most people are starting school in the middle of August, you're not waiting until the middle of August to figure out whether you're playing football or not, most likely. If you are, then your schedule's getting pushed back because people are opening up toward the end of August with their first official game.
You know, I guess you had mentioned Chain of Command a second ago. I'll get in touch on that if that's okay with you. I look at it as everything I do in education has kind of a chain of command, and you understand what it again is in your lane of leadership, I call it, and when do I need to call upon people to make sure that I'm not stepping out of my lane. So you touched on it a second ago. There's a protocol or some procedures in place that if you're just going to go play in June, you're going to go play in June, or if you're going to take a trip. But all of a sudden now, if you're going to start to make decisions on weather and travel and things like that, you're going to touch base with your principal. You're going to talk with your superintendent. You know,
right.
I guess I look at this as when we're in our lane of leadership, we're going to lean heavy on from the top down. You know, when you start having the governor and the Ohio Department of Education here in our state making these decisions on school and so forth, that's going to have a lot to do with obviously when we're going back to school, when sports can start. I think when I answer the question, how does this end? Well, I think school has to be the first domino to fall, and I think that's why again we're going to continue to do our jobs and have contingency plans as teachers and as coaches and so forth. And I'm leaning weekly on my athletic director, on my principal. We're having conference calls, we're having different things. I'm reaching out to my players. I try to as many times a week as I can. But we're all kind of in our lane, but we're waiting on that decision from the top down because when people ask me, well, Shayne, how do you think this ends? I say pretty open, pretty confidently that I don't think this can go anywhere from an athletic standpoint until we are academically coming back in a decision in terms of getting kids back to school. So I think that has to be one of the first dominoes to fall. So I think what I would tell any young coach or any coach in general out there in terms of, what do you think? Don't you feel like, Matt, it's that in your lane of leadership, chain of command is really like, I'll throw this out there. I love these things that are kind of in the real world right now. Roger Goodell of the NFL, the commissioner there. He's going to run this NFL draft. Well, he had just said, you talk about leadership. He'd stepped up and said, hey, we're doing it this way. We're going to be virtual. We're going to have, I was reading the other day where they're sending cameras and lights and different things to some of the top 15, 20 picks or projected picks. And they're going to set up the stage there at their house or whatnot. But what jumped out at me more than anything was, I think I put it in my notes here. He was talking about how he asked them to follow the lead, and he said any public discussion would be strongly frowned upon, in terms of he expected everybody to fall in line and to do it this particular way. And I think that lane of leadership is going to be very, very important to us, waiting on people way above us to kind of start the domino, so to speak. And then once that happens, do you follow what I'm saying there in terms of, do you feel I'm missing something when I talk about coaches or athletic directors or even principals for that matter, having their plans, having their contingency plans, but really kind of waiting on people above all of us on the chain of command and then kind of following that lead?
No, yes, I agree, and I think that what, using your example there, basically what he's saying is, listen, you might agree, you might disagree, but we're all going to do it this way, and
Yeah.
we're going to get on board. And I think that's what's going to happen at the high school level too, because let's say, for instance, we go back and play spring sports in May on a shortened schedule. There's going to be there's going to be 3 or 4 different opinions. You know how it is the league you coach in baseball. There's going to be 3 or 4 at least different opinions on what should we do with our league? Should we play one league game? Should we play double header? Should we play a tournament to decide league champion? We've got 14 days to get a league in, and whatever decision is made, it's the job of the coaches in that league to get on board together and say, hey, we're going to go pull this off, because at the end of the day, and not to sound cliche, we are in this for our athletes and their development improvement. If this is the decision that's made, we got to be in on it. We all have to be on board, that's going to be the way it is. And I think with that chain of command, our superintendents right now, I think obviously they're at the mercy a little bit of our governor and what he decides to do. I think most people that I talk to seem to think the leadership in our particular state at the government level during all this has been pretty good. Some reasonable decisions have been made, I think, that have kept Ohio in as good a position as we can be in right now with this whole COVID thing. But I think once the governor, like you said, gives the free and clear for schools to either go back to school, because I agree that's going to be one of the big things. But like I said before, to start summer sports or whatever, once that decision is made, then that's now where the superintendents of schools, that's where their leadership kicks in and says, okay, we've been given permission to do this. Now, what's it look like for us? You see what I'm saying? Because right now, every school in our state's in the same boat. You're shut down. But when that governor says you're no longer shut down, you can start to do things. Not everybody's going to do things the same. Does that make sense? Because every school is going to decide for themselves sort of how we approach this thing. And that's where the leadership of our superintendents and the leadership of our state athletic association is going to be huge, to make sure everybody's on the same page, everybody's moving forward the same way. Let me ask this, Shayne, because I know we're getting ready to wrap up. But I guess this is the simplest. This is the question I've asked a couple of my buddies, and I'm going to ask you the same thing. I'm putting you on the spot here a little bit, probably, but the one thing people find out about this show is we do a little bit of pre-show meeting, but a lot of stuff we just shoot from the hip. I think that, that's how we roll. But if I asked you right now, if I said you and I are going to be sitting at a game, and I look at you and say, man, I'm glad things are back to normal. One, when's that going to be? Do you have any idea in your mind when that will be? And what's that, I guess, what's that look like, or how many hoops have we had to jump through to get to that point? Because think about that for a minute. I'm having a hard time in my mind right now, maybe just because of everything that's went on the past few weeks. I'm having a hard time thinking to myself, imagining that scene in my head where I'm just sitting there at a high school football game or a Cincinnati Reds baseball game or whatever, just hanging out saying, man, glad to be back to normal. I mean, how long away are we from that?
From what I can gather right now, for us to be sitting at a game period together, I feel like at the high school level, school would have to be back in the play. So based on that, there are certain types of competitions that we could be perhaps, getting to witness throughout next year. As far as, the highest levels, when you use the word normal, that could be a tricky thing in the upcoming year, in my opinion. Just from a standpoint of watching people are a little bit cautious and going back. I'm someone, again, that's been teaching for 20 years, have a master's degree, whatever. When it comes to this stuff, for me to sit here medically and start to talk about, that'd be stupid, because I'm stupid to all of it. So I'm not going to sit here. But I think in terms of truly having a handle on the situation, and when I turn on a TV today and I see like what the loss of Carl Anthony Towns' mom and so forth, and the different things, those things are real. So it's one of those things. You used the word to me on the golf course when we were talking about this earlier this week, fear.
Oh, sure.
And I might give you a chance to even to as I throw this question back at you, but this isn't one of those trial and error things. Like you and I've had certain things in coaching, like I said, hey, let's try this, and if it doesn't work, we'll fix it. This would be something that would be awfully bad to be wrong about. So it's one of those things we're going to have to err on the side. As I throw this question back to you, maybe throughout your answer there, talk to us a little bit about what you were talking about when you used the word fear. That really jumped out at me earlier this week.
Well, because I think, it is a scary situation anytime you're dealing with health, but you have this, I still think in our society, and it's shifted a little bit more now. I think most people are taking this very, very seriously. But if you remember when all this started to happen, and oh, we're going to have a game, but only parents are going to be allowed to come to the game.
Right.
And oh, we're going to have a game without fans. Or I can remember when they thought we were going to have March Madness, right, with no fans. And people thought, oh, that's going to be weird. Well, looking back,
if you remember, that changed in like a 12-hour window. It wasn't like they tried it for a week. That changed.
No, it went from that to we're not having it at all. And then, every single sporting event known to man was shut down basically. And why? Well, because of fear. And I think legitimate fear, because you're going to have some people I know when all that started was like, oh, we have these fear mongers that are just trying to stir things up and trying to scare people. And this isn't going to be that big a deal. And well, it's not a big deal until it's your mom or your dad or your grandparents. And then all of a sudden it becomes a big deal. So I think we have to be respectful to the fact that this is real and this is an issue. And no matter when we try to go back to normal, going back to the original thing and when it's going to end, there's going to be fear involved. I saw a survey, and I think it was a pretty small sample size, like maybe only 700 or 800 people surveyed. I think it was Seton Hall maybe did this survey, and it basically asked a question to sports fans, would you be willing to go watch a game this summer, like a baseball game or a sporting event? And basically, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, I don't have the exact numbers or the exact questions, but basically like 70% of people said, I won't attend a sporting event until there's a vaccine for this. Well, most things you read or what you hear from medical experts, we're a year to 18 months away from vaccines for this thing. It's, so with that being said, if 7 out of 10 people are saying we don't even want to go to a game out of fear, what do games look like? What do sports look like? Are we not going to see a Major League Baseball game this year? Are we not going to see the NFL season start on time? And bringing it down to the high school level, are we going to be playing high school football without fans? I'm just I'm throwing different things out there. And obviously those things have financial ramifications. They have ramifications just to the game itself and the quality of the game or the experience. But I think all these things, it's okay to consider all these things because you never know. This, like I said, this is a once in a lifetime deal. We don't know what's ahead.
Well, and I think the word that comes to my mind as you're saying that was the final thing in my notes in terms of the simplicity of leadership, staying in your lane, but then being creative. What's going to happen is, that's why I say when you brought the medical side of it in terms of having an absolute, to keep this thing under control, we could be a year away from normal. Again, I go back to, I think, but I do think that we're going to have opportunities throughout that year of trying to reach normalcy to have some sort of stair step of returning to normalcy. And I think it's going to be
not to interrupt you, but if normal what you're saying is, if normal means that, hey, we're free and clear and there's not a thing to worry about with this.
Yeah.
we're a long way from that.
I agree.
But I think,
don't you think there has to be some
yeah,
creativity along the way
there's
that
going
when
to be
you do open up as a high school AD or as a high school coach,
right.
having an opportunity to be creative to try to make the best of these
Yeah.
situations, to stair step our way back to that?
There's going to be a new normal to some extent, and you may have to look at fall sports and say, gosh, we gotta start playing again, right? We gotta get back. I even heard somebody the other day say, what if schools start back and you say, well, we can only have so many kids per classroom. We want to keep them spaced out. I don't see that happening because I don't think you could hardly do that. I mean, with
Logistically, you couldn't
space
do it, right?
but that's what the way people are thinking, which you have to think that way. Now, the person that told me that wasn't a teacher and didn't understand sort of the dynamics of a classroom. But even athletically, you have to think that way. Like, hey, listen, here's what I want to have happen. I want high school football to start and the crowd, the stands to be full. If that doesn't happen, what's our next course of action? You know what I mean? What is our next best thing? And so that we don't get stuck in a situation where we just don't have anything. It's crazy, Shayne. And like I said, we knew coming into this show we weren't going to have a definite answer. There is no definite answer, but I think we just wanted to share some ideas with people, and hopefully and I know you're going to share our email and our Twitter and all that. Hopefully some people will throw some ideas our way, what they think about this situation.
Matt, we there's no way we could start a podcast show like we're trying to now and talk about, hey, we're going to take world events and put them into high school sports and not start with this.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much had to, right?
As we move forward, though, not to say we wouldn't answer questions in response to fan emails and so forth, but we do kind of want to move forward. You agree, and start to tackle these other topics as we come back into show 2, show 3. We kind of want fans to know that we are going to kind of move away from this. Not that we're going to stop thinking about it, but kind of move away from this and move into some of these other topics. Is that kind of the direction you kind of see us going?
Yeah, and I hope, and I don't know if we did a great job explaining it early or not, but like I think what you and I both want this show to be, this show tonight was a little different in the sense that we felt it was important to sort of introduce what we were doing. Obviously, like you said, we're pretty much stuck on at least this first show having to talk about the COVID situation a little bit because it's just so relevant right now. But at the same time, nothing that we talk about do we want to just beat a dead horse. We don't want to just continue to talk about the same old. So when we talk about this stuff, we're going to try to take different angles. I hope we did that a little bit tonight. But I think what you're going to see in this show, and you tell me if you agree, is we're going to really trim the fat, so to speak. This isn't going to be, if you're into bells and whistles, this probably isn't the podcast for you. It's not going to be a lot of fancy, technological stuff. I mean, we're just basically getting right to it. We're going to take a topic. And tonight we had to dance a little all over the place with the whole coronavirus deal. But in the future, we're going to take one topic per show and just really dissect and attack it. We're not going to beat around the bush with it. It's going to be right there. Here's what we feel like. And I think we will be able to get away from the whole coronavirus thing a little bit. And I'm sure in the future, as we talk about these issues, especially over the next couple months, it'll come up from time to time, but it's not going to be something we dwell on. We want to talk about some other stuff that we think is relevant in high school sports. And we're going to take national topics and see how they kind of filter down to high school sports. And so I'm excited about it. Like I said, this show is a little different than what the rest of them will be.
Agreed.
But I think it was a decent start, hopefully, to lay the groundwork for it.
Well, to all our listeners or viewers there, if you're watching on YouTube, most of our local people know this. If you just take SVC Sports Zone, that's going to help you contact us in a lot of ways. First of all, on email, it's admin1@svcsportszone.com. Again, that's ADMIN, the number 1 at svcsportszone.com. That's the best way to find us on Twitter. And as you start to look on YouTube and pretty much all the social media out there, if you utilize your SVC Sports Zone, you shouldn't have any trouble finding us. drop us a tweet, drop us an email, let us know certain topics. Would love to hear you respond to different things. We have a list of about 7 or 8 things that we really feel like are going to make for a great year. But we certainly look forward to hearing from you. Matt, before I wrap us up and get us out of here, final thought.
No, just excited, Shayne, to do this with you again. Excited about the format and the way we're going to really dissect some topics and try to offer some solutions to some things in high school sports today. Just excited about it, and looking forward to next week with you.
Well, on that note, we're going to go ahead and get on out of here. Again, it's expanding the zone, and we're excited to take our passion for leadership and take our passion for high school sports and see how our culture out there is shaping it every single day. So appreciate you taking some time with us, and look forward to getting back in the studio for episode 2 here real soon. Thank you.